On our previous videos, we've talked about the basics of the left hand movements and the basic positions on holding the violin. Now, let's talk about the right hand. Alright, so welcome to the in-depth violin guide. So for this episode, we'll be talking about the right hand, or as we call it, the bow hand. So there are 4 major headings in Galamian's book where he divided the right hand techniques into 4 major categories. The system of springs, as he called it, holding the bow, the physical motion of the arms, hands, and fingers, and the drawing of the bow strokes. So let's get into it. So basically, the bow has some systems of springs that we've been talking about. Okay. So technically, it is a spring in a way. And also the bow is considered a lever. And this will come in handy as we talk about more on the bow and the right hand, of course. So, in this part, he said that there are natural and artificial springs concerned in holding the bow. So it doesn't just start with our hands. So the artificial part, as we said, is here. The stick and the hair. So they aren't rigidly placed, but they have this sort of give to them that makes them spring back and forth into motion. So that is important in the violin playing and technique, so that we know how to use these springs properly. We also have springs here in our hands that control the bow, and also here in our arms and our wrists. So the springiness of our hands and fingers and also our arm shouldn't be rigid, no? It shouldn't cause tension and should remain in this sort of natural position. Galamian said in his book that he tried to compare it to how our legs function when walking. So it doesn't just start with our feet, our toes also move in a way. So everything should flow and do their own thing, so that the bow hold or the bow arm moves in a way that is easy and relaxed. The spring should also not just be loose, but it could adjust the firmness depending on the sound that we need to produce. So when we hold the bow, our fingers, our hands, and our arms should be able to adjust accordingly to the certain techniques or certain sounds that we need to produce. Now, with regards to the bow hold, the bow hold is quite different from a grip, no? When we talk about holding the bow, are we really holding the bow is the question here. So, our right hand is only guiding the bow, no? We're not really trying to grip it or grasp it and cling to it. We're just trying to guide the bow to move in the direction that we want it to, and to also adjust how strong or how weak our pressure is needed in order for us to play. So, we want our hands to be as natural as possible when we're trying to hold the bow. So, what I like to do with my students is I let them raise their forearms up. So this would mean that their hand shouldn't be raised because only the forearms is raised. Okay, so there you would see the natural drop of the hand, where you will see how the fingers would actually lay on the bow. So that is most likely the intervals or the distances between the fingers of the player. So when we try to put it on the bow, there. So it's the natural drop, natural position. Now, one important part of the bow hold is the thumb. The bow is a lever, and the thumb acts as the fulcrum or the point on which the bow rotates. So we have to be careful with where we put the thumb. So I like to start with the thumb. We try to put the thumb underneath the stick near the frog. You can also put it on the frog, but I prefer to put it right close to the frog. Okay, so there's a point of contact here. So there's a point of contact between this part of your thumb and this part of the bow. So your thumb will act as the point of rotation of the bow. Okay, now we get to the 3 fingers first. Then we leave out the pinky finger or the smallest finger. Okay, so we try to keep it on this part of our fingers. The point of contact of your index should be right here near the pad. Now the middle finger right here and the ring finger there. So as you can see, the tips aren't holding the bow. So we're wrapping around our fingers. So this will give us more control with the bow, and we will see later how we will control the bow. And then lastly, the pinky. An important role of the pinky is to counteract the balance between this part of the bow and the other side of the thumb. So the pinky works that way. Now, bows come in different shapes and sizes, no? And some bows come circular like this one, like my bow. But some bows also come in an octagon form. But the thing to remember is all bows that we will use, all modern bows for that matter, will be octagonal here at the end part near the frog. So a good guide is to use the edge of the bow right near the top, and you put the pinky finger there, almost at the edge. So as you can see, it's not at the front, it's not at the back, because that would cause your finger to slip. So you try to find that position. It's almost here. If you can see that line, that edge would be a good spot for you to put your fingers. Again, this is not exact because, again, the bow grip or the bow hold would rely mainly on how your fingers land on the bow naturally. So you can adjust depending on what is needed. Okay, so in holding the bow, it shouldn't be too tense or too firm. Again, we want it to be natural and relaxed so that we can adjust accordingly to different bow strokes, bow techniques, and different articulations that are needed in our playing. Okay? The thing to remember is that you just need to keep the points of contact on the same spot, but you can move your fingers. So you can move everything, but still stay on the same spot that you need to be in. Okay, I'd like you to imagine that points of contact of your fingers are glued into the bow so that you can really see how much you can move and how little pressure is needed for you to hold onto your bow. Now, let's talk about the motions with regards to our bow hold. So for the finger motions, there is 5 basic motions: vertical, horizontal pivot, the vertical pivot, and the lengthwise axis rotation. So for the vertical motion, this is concerned with the fingers dropping the bow. So you can raise or lower your bow. So you can practice this motion on the string. Try to put your bow away from the strings and then drop it on the string, using only the movement of your fingers. In this motion, we use our thumb and middle finger, and then every other finger follows. So again, this is the vertical motion. Next is the horizontal motion. So the horizontal motion is concerned with moving the bow into this motion, or lengthwise for the bow. So this is different from here. So when we do this, this is the horizontal motion on the string. Again, you can try to play it on the string. So that is the horizontal motion, or the stroke motion. When we go down, we extend. And then when we go up, we contract. So this is different from the stroke. Okay? Just to clarify things. This is only for the motion of the fingers. And it will come in handy when we discuss the different techniques. The next one is the horizontal pivot motion. This one is concerned with this motion. As you can see, it's swinging the bow. So this is good to know for changing sounding points, as we will talk about later on these videos. So you stretch your pinky and then you pull it back. So while stretching your pinky, you're pulling with your index. And then the reverse one is like that. So it depends on the angle that you need. Again, you can put it down on your bow, on your strings, so that you can have this visualization of what is really going to happen. Now, the vertical pivot motion is this motion. So this is for changing pressure in regards to the strings. Again, so it's changing the pressure of using, for example, you're playing chords. You try to change the pressure. So again, the thumb acts as the fulcrum that we're talking about. As you can see, that's the point of where it rotates. And then, using your index to counteract that movement, you can use this to control the pressure on the string crosses, etc. And we will talk about that later. The last one is the lengthwise axis rotation. Now, this is the lengthwise axis rotation. So you rotate it within your fingers by using your middle finger to roll, almost rolling. So this is used to lean towards either the bridge or either the fingerboard, changing the tone color and also changing the quality of the sound, not just also the volume. So all these motions can add up into the bow techniques that we will use, no? It's a combination of all these finger motions. And that's why we need these springs to be mobile enough yet relaxed so that you can have the most control out of your instrument. For our wrist motion, we only have two: the vertical movement and the horizontal movement. Now, the vertical movement is this movement. If you can show it. This is the low movement of our wrist and the high movement. So up and down. And then the horizontal movement is the sideways movement of the wrist. So again, like this, like so. Now, with regards to this movement, it's not the same as the fingers where you can use one or the other. These two movements are the basic motions that you need to combine in order for you to use your hands or wrist properly. So you will combine all these movements. And here, if you can see, or you can understand that all our movements are circular. Okay, this will come in handy when we try to put them all together. Now, with regards to our forearm, there's only two motions that we need to look at, which is the open-close motion. So this is the motion that is greatly used with our bowing. So, if you can see, our joint here is the hinge joint. No? So the hinge joint moves in a circular form. If you will trace your arm, it moves circular. But again, our bow is straight. So we need different motions or our springs to work together to get into that straight line. And we'll get to that later. Now, there's also a movement which is called the forearm rotation. Okay. We often mistake this movement for a hand movement, but it's actually moving the whole of our forearm. This is called pronation and supination. So generally, this is very natural. We open doorknobs or we do things using this motion, right? This movement. So we will use everything all together. Again, different motions, but we will combine all of this so that we can properly execute our different bow strokes. Now, the last one is with the upper arm. So a vertical movement of the upper arm is used mainly for changing strings or crossing strings. The next motion is the horizontal motion, or this motion. So again, if we combine the two, we form a circular motion. So again, we're all working with circles here. But the thing is, we need a straight line or path with our bow. So with all these circular motions, we'll try to make sure that our bow moves in a straight line. Okay, one thing to note about the upper arm is that you shouldn't be raising your shoulders, because what happens is it causes a lot of tension within our body and it limits our movements. So make sure when you're moving this part is you don't raise your shoulders accidentally, okay? So you really need to understand and isolate this part of your arm when you're trying to move. So, the basic principle in bowing is that we need a straight bow from this part to this part. But again, we've talked about our body naturally moves in a circle. So how do we combine everything that we have learned so that we can make sure that our bows will go straight? So how do we draw the straight bow right now? In the book, Galamian said that there are 3 stages for a straight bow. So we have the triangle from here, which is right here at the front. And then as we go down the middle, we form a square. You can see the square. Now, when we reach the end, we form another big triangle. So these points are sort of checkpoints for you to check if you are going in a straight line. So the motions that we discussed are moving the bow into this straight line. Again, if you look at it like this, it moves circular, right? So we apply everything, every different motion from the basic motion so that we can get into a straight line. So we try to move less of our upper arm, and then we adjust our wrist motion, our wrist, so that we can go in a straight line. Our fingers are also used so that we can move the bow in its direct path. So if you would look at my hand, how I do it. So when I reach the end, my fingers, I'll start with my fingers, draw the bow. So this is horizontal motion, right? And then my wrist moves with it. Now, as I reach the end, there is this slight movement from my wrist to go this way. Okay, I used both the vertical and horizontal movement together. As you can see, I went diagonal. And of course, I moved my forearm. Now, while moving it, I want to not just maintain a straight bow, but also maintain a even sound. So we also use a little bit of our elbows to give more weight into here, and we also pronate our hand just a little bit when we reach a certain point. So again, all those motions are working together to be able to perform a single stroke. So can you see the need for you to understand all those basic movements? Now, when we go up, it's the same thing. So another motion here from our fingers. Now the wrist moves the opposite way. And then there's a slight lift because this part of the bow is quite heavy. So there's another vertical motion that's happening. Sometimes we also tilt the bow inwards, going to us, the hair facing us, so that it doesn't squeak or produce this sound. Okay? So in order for you to produce a pretty straight bowing, you need to work all of your different muscles. All of the different muscle groups, from your fingers to the wrist to the hand to the upper and lower arm. So that's how you can create a good stroke or a good bowing. So we'll talk about the other parts of bowing on the next video, and I hope you learned something new, or you've added another skill or new knowledge in your violin learning. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like this video, share it to your friends, comment down below anything that you want to say, or if you have questions. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content. And I'll see you on the next video.